Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep into the world of phenolic compounds.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, these are they're all over the plant kingdom,
Oh, yeah.
and they're so important for plants. But what's really fascinating is how they seem to impact our health, too, you know?
That's right.
And we've gone through all this research, and we're going to take a look at, how they're structured and how they're classified,
Okay.
where we find them, what they do, the whole thing.
Right.
So our goal today is to sort of distill all of that into the most interesting and the most relevant information for our listeners.
Absolutely. And at the most basic level, all these phenolic compounds, they share a common kind of structural core. It's all about the carbon and oxygen atoms arranged in a specific way.
Okay, so it's like a starting point.
Yeah, it's a foundation for this huge diversity of molecules that we see.
So let's start with that structure then. Where do these shapes begin? I mean, where does it all start?
Well, the simplest ones are things like phenol itself.
Okay.
Just a single benzene ring with a hydroxyl group attached. Right.
From there, we move on to what we call phenolic acids,
Okay.
which is essentially a phenol with an extra carboxylic acid group added on.
Interesting.
And these include things like hydroxybenzoic acids,
Okay.
such as salicylic acid, which you might recognize.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And then we have hydroxycinnamic acids,
Okay.
like caffeic acid.
Right.
So these are becoming a little more familiar in the kind of health and diet space.
I feel like I've heard about those more and more.
Yeah, definitely.
But then the real diversity, I think, comes in with the flavonoids.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, that's where it seems to explode.
Yeah, the flavonoids are a huge group,
Yeah.
and they all share this core structure of 3 rings,
Okay.
2 6-carbon rings, and a 3-carbon bridge in the middle.
Got it.
And it's this basic core that can have all these different variations.
Okay.
And that's what gives rise to all the subclasses like the flavonols,
Okay.
quercetin and kaempferol.
Yeah.
Really abundant in onions, apples,
Yeah.
berries.
And they have these, like, amazing protective effects.
Right, so they protect the plant, and then they seem to have this carryover effect to us.
Exactly. It's like the same compound that helps the plant deal with environmental stress
Interesting.
could also be helping our bodies at a cellular level.
So when we hear about, the benefits of eating colorful fruits and vegetables and things,
Yeah.
those flavonols are probably playing a role.
Definitely a big role.
Okay.
And then there's other subgroups too, the flavones,
Okay.
the flavonones, flavonthreols.
Like catechins in tea.
Yeah, exactly. The catechins in green tea.
Okay.
And then the anthocyanins.
Okay, now those sound familiar.
Yeah, those are the ones that give the vibrant colors
The colors, right?
to berries and red cabbage and purple grapes.
It's like a natural dye almost.
Exactly. They're pigments, and they're also very potent antioxidants.
Interesting.
And it's important to note that anthocyanins are actually just anthocyanins with sugar molecules attached.
Okay, so a little more complex.
Yeah, and those sugars, they actually influence the color and the stability of the anthocyanins.
Makes sense.
And then we have isoflavones,
Okay.
which are found in legumes like soybeans.
Right.
And they're interesting because they have these estrogen-like effects.
Oh, wow.
So they're called phytoestrogens.
Oh, I see.
So it's really amazing how this one basic flavonoid structure
Yeah.
can give rise to this huge array of different compounds with different actions.
It's like nature's way of riffing on a theme.
Absolutely.
So now let's move on to tannins.
Okay.
Now, I always think of like red wine and that dry mouth feeling.
Yeah, exactly. That astringent sensation.
Yes.
That's the tannins binding to proteins in your mouth.
Interesting.
Tannins are kind of different because they're larger molecules.
Okay.
They're polyphenols.
Right.
And we mainly see them in 2 types. Hydrolyzable tannins and condensed tannins.
Like the proanthocyanidins.
Exactly. Those are found in grapes and berries.
More of those beneficial compounds.
Always.
Right. And then finally we have still beans.
Yeah, still being
A little different structure.
Yeah, they have a slightly different arrangement of those rings.
Okay.
But the most famous one is probably resveratrol
Resveratrol.
from grapes.
Right.
And that's been studied a lot for its potential benefits for heart health.
Very cool. So plants have basically created this whole toolbox of compounds.
They have.
But how do they make them?
Well, it all starts with what's called the shikimic acid pathway.
Okay.
And you can think of that as the plant's way of producing the basic aromatic building blocks
Got it.
that they'll then use to make these more complex molecules.
Okay.
And then these building blocks are fed into the phenylpropanoid pathway.
Okay. Another pathway.
Yeah, and that's where we start to see the assembly of hydroxycinnamic acids and then flavonoids, stilbenes, and all the other phenolic compounds.
Wow. So there's real like step-by-step construction process.
It's quite complex.
Yeah.
And a key player in all of this is an enzyme called phenylalanine ammonia lyase, or PAL. Yeah, and it catalyzes one of the first steps in that phenylpropanoid pathway.
It's like a little factory in there.
Exactly. It's amazing.
So where do we find these compounds in our everyday life? I mean, it sounds like they're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. I mean, primarily we find them in plant-based foods.
Okay, makes sense.
So, berries are fantastic sources of flavonoids and anthocyanins.
Right.
Apples and grapes, too.
Okay.
Then you have things like onions, broccoli, spinach.
Yeah.
Those are good sources of flavonols and phenolic acids.
Interesting.
Whole grains contain phenolic acids and lignans.
Okay.
Soybeans are packed with isoflavones.
Right.
And then beverages like tea, coffee, and red wine.
Oh, yeah.
Those are all rich in catechins, phenolic acids, tannins, resveratrol.
So it's not just like eating our fruits and vegetables, it's also what we're drinking.
Exactly.
Wow. And even spices.
Yeah.
Like turmeric.
Turmeric is a good one. It's got curcumin,
Right.
which is a really potent anti-inflammatory.
It's amazing how prevalent they are in our diet.
It really is.
So what's the plant's reason for producing all these compounds?
Well, they serve a lot of important functions for the plant.
Okay.
Many of them act as defense mechanisms
Against what?
against things like microbes and herbivores that want to eat them.
So that's their own
Well,
built-in protection.
Exactly. They also help protect against UV radiation from the sun.
Wow.
The pigments can attract pollinators,
Right.
and some can even inhibit the growth of other plants nearby.
Oh, wow. So it's like competition.
Yeah, it's called allelopathy.
I see. So it's really all about survival and propagation for the plant.
It is. It's fascinating.
And that brings us to why this is all relevant to us, the health benefits,
Yeah.
like the antioxidant activity you hear so much about.
Right. Well, many phenolic compounds are very potent antioxidants,
Okay.
which means they can neutralize these harmful free radicals in our bodies.
Right.
And these free radicals, they can damage our cells and contribute to chronic diseases.
So these compounds are kind of helping to protect us from that damage.
Exactly. They're like little shields.
Interesting.
They also exhibit anti-inflammatory effects,
Oh, yeah.
like curcumin and quercetin that we mentioned earlier.
Right.
And there's growing research on their potential benefits for cardiovascular health as well.
So it's really interesting how these compounds that plants develop for their own survival
Yeah.
seem to offer us these protective qualities too.
Quite remarkable.
So to sum all of that up,
Okay.
phenolic compounds this huge, diverse group of plant-based chemicals.
Right?
They all share this basic ring structure.
Yeah.
They're produced through these specific pathways inside the plant.
Right.
They're found abundantly in so many of the plant-based foods that we eat.
Absolutely.
And while they're essential for the plant's survival,
Yes,
they also appear to offer some pretty significant health benefits,
they do.
largely through their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties.
That's a great summary.
And considering how much of these compounds are in our everyday diet,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder what other undiscovered benefits they might have and what future research could uncover about their long-term impact on our health.
Yeah. It's an exciting area of research.
It really is. It's something to think about. So thank you so much for this deep dive.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
It's a fascinating stuff.
It is.
And we'll see everyone next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.